Hello and hi YouTube family. This is Celestial and you are tuning into Celestial Evolution. Celestial Evolution. Thank you very much for tuning back in if you are returning. If you are not, welcome. Hello and hi. My name is Celestial. Thank you very much for stopping by. I hope you will find some knowledge on this channel. What I hope to convey to you are my thoughts about what I feel contribute to a solid foundation that you can find grounding on to not only survive, but thrive. Now, the 4 pillars I talk about more in depth. If you want to watch my first episode, you can do so. I only have about 4 right now, so it's not too far back. You can figure it out. But I will reiterate here what I do believe are going to create a solid foundation. The 4 pillars are going to consist of physicality, spirituality, education, and financial well-being. When we have these aligned, we're conscious about them, and we have them in flow, I believe that will create a solid grounding that we can stand upon to then formulate our truest and most authentic selves without the need of dependency on anyone else, society, family, spouses. If things happen, we can be fine on our own. With that being said, welcome to today's episode, which was inspired by a thought that I had about a conversation that I had with one of the angels in my life a very long time ago. It was probably about 12, but this angel is named Uncle Sunny, aka Uncle Bunny, and this was when we would go back and forth. I lived in Stockton, and my uncles and aunts would make the trek down to Stockton to bring us up for like weekends or summers. And on these car rides, most usually it happened with my Uncle Sunny, and he would come pick us up, and when the dial of the radio station turned down, I knew that a lecture was to follow or just his general teachings that helped myself navigate in this very elusive world. One of the conversations that we had touched upon a topic, I don't know how we got there, but it spoke about the law of diminishing return. The law of diminishing return, which I will put the definition up here, is an economic term that is defined as a principle stating that profits or benefits gained from something will represent a proportionally smaller gain as more money or energy is invested into it. An example of this, so we can get it grounded in our mind, would be something like a restaurant owner buys a storefront and he has about 10 tables in it. He has his concept down, the food is delicious, but he has only 1 wait staff, which customers complain about because even though everything was fantastic, it was really hard to get the service that they needed because there was only 1 wait staff on the floor. So to rectify this, the owner then decides to hire another waiter, which helps improve the situation very much and also increases profitability. So he thinks, okay, well, this is working out so well, I'm just gonna hire another. And so another wait staff comes in. Service is even better and profitability still steadily rises. Well, I mean, can't go bad with a good thing, right? So he hires yet another staff. So now there's 4 waiters attending to 10 tables. And he looks at the end of the month and realizes that his profits have actually gone down. What's the cause of this? Well, the idea seemed very plausible to keep hiring more waiters to tend to the initial problem, which was the fact that there were too many people, too many tables for 1 person. So to hire 2 or 3 seems like a good idea, but that extra person is not really benefiting the situation. In fact, they take away from the situation because there's only 10 tables. 3 people can handle that, no problem. The 4th person's just walking around eating up his hours, and that takes away from the profitability of the owner. So I thought about this concept and thought that, this sounds like it could be applicable. The law of diminishing return could be applicable to other areas of life. I wondered if it had like a psychological term, and lo and behold, Google reveals. Yes, it does. The law of diminishing return, also known as the diminishing return phenomenon, is a psychoanalytic term that states the value or enjoyment we get from something starts to decrease after a certain point. It can also be applied to areas of self-improvement, which, for example, would be like you go to the gym, right? I mean, I go to the gym. I don't know about you, but I mean, come on, we go to the gym. And the first few months, if, we've been sedentary or we're trying to get gains, we can probably achieve that within the first couple of months, maybe the first few months. But at a certain point, we start to reach a baseline, which means that we've come to a plateau. And so the only way to rectify this is to either increase the amount of days that we work out or increase the intensity, or both, because it does work out that way. But I was like, let's take this a step further. Relationships have been on my mind these days because, I'm just getting out of one. And you start to get lonely, start to look around, I'm like, should I venture into another one? And I'm trying to think to myself, not yet. But this concept, this law, really resonated with me. And I was like, how does this feed into relationships? So there was this article that I stumbled upon by Marilyn Whitlock, and she summarized the law of diminishing return in a way, connected the law of diminishing returns to relationships in a very perfectly summarized statement. Couples often memorize the dance steps to their relationship. They expect their memorized behavior will always work. This is the way we've always done it in the past, so doing more of it will surely make things better, right? Not always. The law of diminishing return says that there is a point where doing more of the same will stop working in the way we expect, which goes into the first two examples that we had, which was, it worked up to a certain point hiring these waiters, but eventually just ate away at profits. Working out this way worked for this moment, but eventually our muscles were like, it's getting kind of boring, so we need to switch it up. And so we think the way that we've handled our relationships while we're in, the people who are in a relationship, should always be the way that we handle relationships. But like anything, we have to switch it up. We have to know that there is not one way that will work for the entirety of time. So just like there was a solution for hitting that plateau with our workouts, I figured, could there be an approach that applied to relationships in the same way? I started thinking, you can start spicing up the relationship, maybe go on that trip that you guys wanted to go on for a while, or maybe you apply that trick that Cosmopolitan referenced, try it out a little bit, add a little extra flavor. But what happens when we try all of these things and the two individuals still have that void? In my case, the relationship ended. The relationships ended. But then I dug even deeper and I was all like, though that was the case, we broke up, could there have been a way to salvage the situation? And looking back in retrospect, the only way that could salvage that situation was the simple fact that both of the individuals, myself and the past spouse, continued to invest into the relationship. But there has to be a time where, you're putting in an investment. You have to take a moment to reorganize, restructure, and analyze whether or not what you're doing is actually increasing profitability or value or taking away from it. And then that's when we can decide to either move forward with it or to call it quits. Before I move on to the next idea, there are so many precursors to when it is valid to call a relationship off. There are so many precursors to that idea because we're humans. We're not as the business you can just throw away. I mean, you can, but there's consequences. People become jaded, people get hurt. There's a lot of damage control that happens afterwards, that needs to happen. And so the precursors to this question, first and foremostly, explore some very harsh truths. When we think of running a business, we usually have this idea that's sparked by a passion, something that we love to do, that we want to bring forth to the world, or money. But let's talk about passion first, okay? Some jump into starting a business not understanding the mechanics of what it takes for a business to actually become successful. The first thing we do should be to create a business plan, have some research behind it, figure out how feasible our concept is actually going to be in regards to success. When we think about how much money we need to have to start it up, when we get the location, we have to do the inspection so that we're not falling into something that has a lien, has like a termites, and we're investing into some dud, How is it that the same logic is not applied to relationships? Pastor R.C. Blakes, who has a fantastic channel here on YouTube, who answers all seasons of life, answers the questions to all seasons of life. I recommend it highly because he has helped me, especially in this venture that I'm on now. But he talks about vetting your future relationship, or anybody that you're bringing into your life, your friendships, relationships. These are investments of time, okay? And we don't stop to ask the vital questions that can determine early on if this person is going to be compatible for the rest of for the time that we share with them. And I think of passion, right, in regards to business. It's an essential force, driving force, but without any work behind it, that passion just easily becomes recreational, more hobby-like. Chemistry in regards to relationship is the first indicator that there is potential that can follow that initial chemical reaction. But as we all know, we don't feed into the potential. That's all it ever is potential. Unfortunately, I think the first way that we feed into potential when it comes to relationship is by humping it. Yeah, we're like, let's get it in, let's test this potential. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that if you feel the need, the desire, the urge to do that, but let's explore the negatives of starting off that way. Women, I'm talking to you. If I can say, the majority of us, when we enter into physical connections in that matter, feelings are attached to it, right? And sometimes the feelings are attached to an individual whom, if we had asked the questions early on, we could have saved ourselves a couple of months, a year of investing into a relationship that was meaningless from the start. And I can hear people speaking at their screen. Well, some loves are created that way, okay? Just don't knock it until you try it. I get it. I agree with you, okay? To each his own. Have some fun. There are rules, or there are exceptions to every rule. But how many, and I want you to think about this, how many of these people engaging in these types of relationships are in it merely faking the funk to prove a point, or how many of them are just trying to avoid being alone? Ultimately, a diminishing return begs the question, do we keep performing in a way that once brought success but is now depleting our resources, or do we expand, or do we tank because of improper operations? For our relationships, do we live a life of repeating the daily humdrum that eventually bores us? Do we choose to grow, or do we simply let the relationship fall apart by whatever means it is? Usually it comes in the form of, acting out in ways that are passive aggressive, so that one of you eventually just says, you know what, I'm moving on, out of here, all right? It's nothing in the first place. There is no right answer. I feel what it boils down to is taking the time to understand what we are invested in. If it's worth it, we will continue to see it through. If it isn't, well then, okay, it's okay to put egos aside and let it go. C'est la vie. It is what it is. But before you enter into a situation that is going to take time, if it does not work out, to heal from, because we have to analyze the situation, you have your feelings involved, you develop a routine, you develop a connection with somebody, and that's hard to break away from. R.C. Blakes didn't coin the term, but he talks a lot about soul ties. He has probably about 6 episodes that I've seen thus far about soul ties and how they are extremely hard to get over. And sometimes they keep us stagnated to a very large degree that sometimes we never get up from them, because we keep going back and forth to something that takes away from our future potentiality of true growth and gets in the way of the potentiality of meeting somebody who is actually going to be the person that the universe, God, created for you. We enter into relationships without the vision of foresight, and the only way that we can develop that, or at least try to calculate it, is by having variables. Diminishing return sometimes has to develop by experience. And what I mean by that is, if we don't have the idea of foresight or being able to analyze the variables that are present, such as knowing that 10 tables and 4 waiters is not necessary. Same thing with relationships. If we knew the variables beforehand by asking questions and saying, okay, you are Muslim and I'm Christian, and your parents expect your children to be brought up by Muslim traditions, and my parents want my children to be raised by Christian tradition, or I want children and you don't want children, or you like the idea of polygamy and I don't, or blah blah blah. Whatever the case is, sometimes we get so lonely that we overlook logic, and we can save ourselves a lot of time if that was what we were trying to preserve in the first place. Sometimes, we just want to get one off. That's fine. That's fantastic. Do you. Whatever. Have fun. You know what I'm saying? Live your life. But if a relationship was something that you wanted, I think that it is necessary to ask the questions that will help you conduct a proper analysis if the relationship is actually feasible. But diminishing return has to have those variables in line. Sometimes you do it by experience, sometimes we can calculate it. beforehand, initially, to help us save that precious asset we call time. But thank you for taking the time to ponder these thoughts with me, because these are the random things that pop into my brain at different times of the day, and I think, how can this be a talk? How can this be applicable? And my awesome jiu-jitsu coach, whom I have linked a couple of YouTube videos he's done in the description box below. If you like jiu-jitsu, check out his page, subscribe, support. He has some great workouts that he shows you for free. But don't let me talk about it. Let him show you about it. And don't forget to subscribe, He gave me an ending, because I just tend to ramble on and never know how to close this. So I just want to thank you first and foremostly for tuning back in. If you are new to the channel, I hope you liked what you heard. Check out a couple of my videos. Once I start getting a roll on this, which I am, you can start asking me about different things that you are thinking about, and hopefully I can do some research, or maybe have gone through what it is that you're asking about, and we can talk about it here on this channel. So until next time, keep looking, learning, and evolving. This has been Celestial on Celestial Evolution. See you next time.